In today's video I show you how you can create a fully animated slide deck with AI to present yourself or your work in a completely unique way. And what you're seeing here is a website designed as a presentation. You click through it like a normal slide deck, but every slide arrives in its own way and nothing about it feels like a plain template. In this case it works as a portfolio, but you could use something like this to tell your own story, to present your work to a client, or to have it running on screen while you talk. And the most fun about this, in my opinion, is that you can be as creative with it as you want. You can go completely overboard with the animations, or you can keep it subtle and elegant, and that's totally up to you. And that's also the thing that you don't really get with tools like PowerPoint or Keynote, where you're picking from the same templated presentations that everyone else is using. In this video I'll walk you through every step, from the concept in Figma to the exact prompts that I used. And make sure to stick around till the end, because I prepared a small free gift for you as a thank you for watching. Before I write a prompt, I almost always design a concept in Figma first. I want to take control over what the design will look like, and designing a concept first is what will make it feel like my personal work rather than generic AI output. And it also helps Claude understand my text prompt better if it has reference images next to it. And that's also why I made two versions of the same slide. As you can see here, the first one is just a slide on its own, and the second one has two navigation buttons underneath and the background color around it. And the second version is the one I hand to Claude later to show exactly how the slide should sit in the browser. For the typography I went with Amiri, which is a serif font, and I combined it with Nunito, which is a sans serif font. And this is a beautiful font match in my opinion, because the serif gives the headings this quiet editorial feel, and Nunito is soft and rounded, so the two of them sit really nicely together. For the hierarchy I kept the body text in a lighter grey and the headings in a full dark, so your eye always lands on the headings first. And for all the eyebrow headings I added a background pill, so it reads a bit like a tag. And I did that to match the UI of the website, because the navigation also sits in a pill. So the interface and the slide itself use the same shape, and I thought that was a nice touch. And I wanted to keep the entire design rounded, so the slides have rounded corners and the images have rounded corners too. And this gives the whole thing a more modern and friendlier look. And that's really it. I played with the placement of the images to keep it playful, so the text and the images sit in a different position on almost every slide. And all of it sits on a full white background to keep the design minimalistic and to keep the focus on the visuals. So with the design concept of the slides ready, the next thing I needed were the visuals. And the visuals are a big part of what makes this design work. I started with one single image that I generated in Higgsfield, which is this 3/4 portrait of a woman leaning against an oak sideboard in a warm interior. And if you look at the prompt, you'll see that I mention a lot of warm tones here. So the terracotta faces, the oversized brown sweater, the cream trousers, the plaster walls, and by allocating these matching warm toned colors, you get a result that looks very cohesive and like a professional portrait. And from there on I asked for different images from within the same photo shoot. I told the AI model that this is an interior photo shoot, and I asked it to be creative with it, and it gives me different variations that still feel like they belong to the same set. I generated images in both vertical 3:4 and horizontal 4:3 ratios, and that gave me a big set of images that I could use to play around with without being stuck to one single crop. I still use Nano Banana for generating these images, and I know that a lot of people prefer GPT Image 2 for photorealistic work, and in some cases I do too, especially for scenes with lots of small details. But the Nano Banana images tend to generate images that are a lot brighter and they feel more airy, where the GPT images are often a bit more moody because of the darker areas in the images. And in this side-by-side comparison I use the same prompt, but you can see the difference quite well. I personally prefer the brighter looking images by Nano Banana for most of my projects. Once I had the images, I generated the video that I wanted to use for the first slide transition. I did this by selecting Clink Turbo in Higgsfield. I tagged a start and an end frame, and I asked for an animation where the model stands up and then poses to the camera like the second reference image. And I used Clink Turbo here because it's cost efficient and because the animation that I needed was very simple. And I only rendered it in 1080p since this is a web-based project and anything more would have been overkill. Now that I have both the design and the visuals, I have everything I need to start with the build in Claude Code. I first made a folder on my computer for all the website files. And inside it, a second folder called Visuals, where I dropped all the visuals I made in Higgsfield. Then in the Claude Mac app I went to the Claude Code tab and I started a new session. I then pointed it at the local project folder I just created on my computer. And I selected Opus 5 as the AI model and finally pasted in my prompt alongside the reference images. And I want to briefly walk you through the first prompt and how it is built, because setting up your first prompt the right way sets up your entire project the correct way. So this first prompt creates one single slide only, and the reason for that is that the first slide becomes the foundation for the entire deck. So I start with the goal, which is to build the first slide of a presentation as a web app. And I explicitly say that this is going to be the foundation for a multi-slide deck, so it needs to structure the code in a way that lets me add more slides later. And then I tell it where to find the visuals for the project. After that I describe the slide itself, so the 16:9 ratio, the image, the heading that says Maya Hayes, the eyebrow pill that sits below it, and I just walk through everything that I can see in the design. And I don't write a long prompt like this by hand, so what I do instead is I put Figma in front of me and then I activate my AI voice transcriber and I just walk my way through the design from top to bottom. I talk about the fonts, the colors, the spacing, all the design tokens, everything that I see, and then I ask Claude to turn that into one long prompt that functions as the foundation for this project. Then after the slide I describe the surroundings, the UI of the website, so that's the background area around the slide and the buttons underneath it. And I end the prompt with the design tokens, which is a list of every design choice I made. So the colors, the corner radius, the fonts, the spacing. And this last part is the reason the whole thing stays consistent later on, because from here on, Claude isn't guessing what I like, it has it written down. So with that foundation in place, the rest of the deck is really just repeating one small routine. I add one slide at a time, and I do this on purpose because if something isn't quite right, I only have one slide to correct, and everything already approved stays exactly as is. So every prompt has two parts. The first part is the slide itself, and I describe that as detailed as I can. So the position of the image, the text, the eyebrow, everything. And then the second part is the in animation, which is the transition from the previous slide into this new one. So I describe where each element comes from and in what order it arrives. So at this point the presentation was finished, but this next part is the one that I find the most useful because it is what makes the deck reusable. So I asked Claude to create a markdown file with the instructions for future slides based on the slides that already exist. So the design tokens, the different layouts that I used and the animations that are already in there, all written down in one single place so it can learn from what's already been built. And because the foundation is already set, adding new slides becomes very easy. It doesn't have to invent a new style or to make new design choices. Because it already knows my boundaries, it knows my design tokens, and it knows the animations that I like. Here you can see it simply asks for more slides and the results look really good. It's all in the same design style that I used in my own designs. So the sans serif for the body text and the serif for the headings, the eyebrow pill and the images with the rounded corners. And it can also pick the visuals from the folder by itself, so you don't have to allocate them one by one if you don't want to. So if you have a new presentation coming up, you just tell it what you want in it and it keeps the same style. You basically design one presentation once and then you keep adding slides to it forever without having to redesign anything, because the design system is already there. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you'd like to see more designs that I built with AI, then please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And as a thank you for watching, I added all the prompts that I used to create these slides, including the design guide, all the visuals and the website files, as a free download in the description. And if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos, then please leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.